What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to talk about the top 10 surprising sales that happened last week. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I know I say this most of the time, but I do really appreciate it. All the comments and the likes and subscriptions really makes it enjoyable to make these videos. And if you haven't watched this video before, what I do is I go over the top 10 most surprising sales that I saw during the Heritage auction, the Heritage Weekly Comic Auction the prior week. And I don't just do the top 10 high sales, I do 5 on the high end that exceeded my expectations and 5 on the low end that failed to meet my expectations. And I start at the least surprising sale and go to the most surprising sale, alternating from high to low sales. And one thing I wanted to mention before I get in the video, there's a new podcast that my friend Jake, that goes under the name Omega Red, and that's Omega_Reed on Instagram. He does this podcast with his friend Jesus, who's under Guaranteed Comics on Instagram. It's called Spec Tales. It's the Spec Tales podcast. It's a comic-based podcast. It's a lot of fun to listen to. Recommend checking it out. I'll put some additional information about it in the description of this video. All right, and with that, let's get into the top 10 sales. All right, now number 10 is a high sale. This is Showcase number 4 in a CGC 3.5 that sold for a record $21,600. If you watch my top 10 Silver Age comics video, this was number 2 on that list. This is the first appearance of Barry Allen as the Flash, and it is also considered the book that started the Silver Age. And this book has really been underperforming for quite a while compared to Marvel books, just like most of DC, but it seems like it's getting a little more renewed interest, and I had estimated the price of this book at $18,500. This exceeded that estimate by 17%. Big jump for a book like this. Now, the prior high for this book had been $17,500, and that was just from June of this year. So this is a jump of over $4,000, or about 23%, and that's a big move considering this book had really been stuck at about $10,000 to $12,000 for quite a long time. Now, I talked about this book in a little more detail in my top 10 Silver Age books video, but this is a pretty rare book when you're talking about these Grail type books, these big Silver Age books. There's only 373 universal copies on the census. If you compare that to something like XMen number 1, there are 3,850 universal copies of X-Men 1 on the census. However, the prices at the same grade are almost the same. For example, an X-Men 1 peaked at $19,200 on March 22nd, and a 3.5 recently sold for $14,400. So it's definitely pulled back some, but this is a book that is 10 times more common and sells for almost the same price and the same grade. So again, that just really shows the demand for Marvel over DC in the current comic market. Now, there are some great alternatives for this book, because I realize this book is out of the price range in any grade for most people. So you've got his second appearance, which is Showcase number 8, which is also the first appearance of Captain Cold, where a 3.5 is about $1,800. I actually just picked up a copy of that book, which should hopefully be showing up pretty soon in a unboxing video I'll be doing soon. Then there's Showcase 13, which is his third appearance and the first appearance of Mr. Element. This is a $900 book in a 3.5 with a $940 sale in May. And you've got Showcase number 14, which is his fourth appearance, also a great cover. I love the cover. I think this is one of the best covers, early covers for Flash. And this is the first appearance of a character called Dr. Alchemy. This is a $750 book in a 3.5. So you can see prices get a little bit cheaper as you go down that range, but all significantly cheaper than that first appearance. Now, the other book you could go for is Flash number 105, and this is the first book in the run once it hits the Silver Age. And so it stopped in the Golden Age with Flash 104, and then they restarted it with Flash 105 in the Silver Age. So this is the first self-titled issue. It's the first appearance of Mirror Master, and it's a little more expensive. It's a little closer to his second appearance, where a 3.5 goes for about $1,300 with a $1,291 sale on July 1st. So you could get into one of these books especially his third or fourth appearance, for a few hundred, maybe $400 to $500 in a low grade. So definitely something to consider, considering how expensive that first appearance really is. All right, now number 9. It's a low sale. It's another big book. This is Amazing Spider-Man #1, where a CGC 1.5 sold for $5,520. And this is another one of the books that I talked about in my top 10 Silver Age keys, and I think somebody got a really good price on this book this week. This is the first appearance of J. Jonah Jameson. It's also the first issue of one of the most successful long-running titles of all time. And I know a lot of people don't really care for the cover, but I like it. I like the Fantastic Four on the cover. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $7,000. This was 21% below that estimate. And the high, the last sale for this book was $6,700, but that was all the way back on April 29th. And there's been some really big sales since then, so that's why I thought it might beat that high, get up to around $7,000. But this book has been jumping all over the place lately. So I think it's one that if you want to get into this book, if you've got some money to spend, it might be worth just watching a number of sales, because it seems like the prices are kind of all over right now and you might be able to find a good deal like this one. For example, a 3.5 sold for $10,800 on August 2nd, but then a 3.5 sold for $16,800 2 weeks later on August 15th. So that is a huge range in the price of this book in the same grade. So definitely something to consider if you're looking at getting into this book. Now, like I mentioned in my top 10 Silver Age books, I think this one is pretty undervalued right now. At this sale price, it's only up about 40% from where it was a year ago, where it was selling for about $4,000. And I think that's just a steal in the current comic market. Now, for alternatives, there aren't really any alternatives for this book. I mean, it's already the alternative for his first appearance, for Spider-Man's first appearance in AF-15. But if you want to go for just another early Spider-Man book, I would recommend just finding one of his best villains, or the villains that you really like, and look at trying to pick up a copy of that. There's tons of them within the first 50 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. Now, number 8, and this is a high sale, another massive book. This is Journey into Mystery, number 83, where a CGC 6.5 sold for $36,000. Now, this was a record in this grade. This is the first appearance of Thor, and this is one of the bigger books I've actually seen in the weekly Heritage Comic Auction. Usually they don't get up into the $30,000 range. Occasionally you might get an AF-15 that's in the 2.5 to 3 range that will hit those types of numbers, but most of the time books that are that big get saved for the more signature type auctions. Now, this was a huge sale. I mean, I had estimated the price of this book at $26,000. Speed it by $10,000 or 38%. The prior high was just $26,400, and that was on June 21st. So this is a new high by $9,600, which is just crazy in that short of an amount of time, about 2 months, especially considering a year ago this book was selling for about $12,000 to $15,000. So it's about tripled in the last year. And I have mentioned this book before, how personally, I'd be a little bit hesitant getting into this book right now, just because we know that Thor might be coming close to the end of his time in the MCU, and like it or not, how often those characters appear in the MCU, in these movies, in these TV shows, really does impact the value of those books. So just something that you might want to be a little careful with over the next couple years as that Thor Love and Thunder movie comes out. Now, this is also a relatively rare book for one of these big Silver Age keys, and there are only 1,545 universal copies of this book out there. And like I said, with X-Men having over 3,000, this is a significantly lower number. Now, for alternatives, his second appearance is a pretty good option. It's definitely more affordable than issue 83, but it's still not cheap. A 2.5 sold on July 27th for $1,625, so it's still going to cost you probably over $1,000 for just about any grade, but a lot less than $36,000. Now, there are some more affordable options that are good early books for Thor. One of them would be Thor issue 126, which is the first time he's got a self-titled run. Before that, it's Journey into Mystery, and then it transitions into The Mighty Thor. So that's a good one. It's got a great Hercules cover. We've got all these rumors that Hercules might be showing up in this Thor movie, so that's kind of a little bit of a double key there. Another option there is Journey into Mystery Annual #1, which is the first appearance of Hercules, so something to go check out. Now that Thor 126, way cheaper. A 4.0 sold for $225 on July 29th, and if you wanted a high grade, an 8.5 sold for just $552 on July 19th, so a much more affordable book. All right, now number 7. This is a low sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man #14 with a CGC 3.5 selling for $1,980. And for me, for these big keys, especially Spider-Man keys, it's always so surprising to see them go for these discounts like this, because this is one of the biggest Spider-Man books out there. I mean, arguably the most popular villain in the Spider-Man run. First appearance of the Green Goblin, and this is why I often preach patience when you're looking for a book, because this was a great deal on this book in my opinion. I had estimated the price at $2,600. This was 24% below that estimate, and the high was $2,640 just back on August 2nd, so very recently. So a couple weeks and you save about $700. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. Now, a year ago, this book was around $1,000 in this grade, in a 3.5. So it's still up 100% since then. It's still up a lot, but we've got the Spider-Man movie coming soon. I don't know if Green Goblin is going to make any type of appearance there, but I think it's inevitable we see either Green Goblin or Norman Osborn at some point in either the Sony or MCU type universe. So I think it's a great book to pick up. Never bad to get these really old Silver Age Spider-Man Rogues books, and this is one of the best ones to get. Now, Green Goblin has multiple great alternative books. One would be his second appearance, which is in issue number 17, where a 6.5 sold for $690 on July 19th, and a 2.5 sold for just $269 on May 24th, and so definitely books that you could get into much more affordably. Now, another great option, a book that I really like, is issue number 39. He's right on the cover, but the other big thing with this book is this is the first time that John Romita drew Spider-Man in the Spider-Man run. He drew him for the first time in Daredevil number 16, but this is the first time in the Amazing Spider-Man run. It's also where Norman Osborn is revealed as Green Goblin, so again, it's kind of a multi-key book. Now, this book has gotten a lot pricier over the last 6 months. A 4.0 sold for $260 on July 30th, and a 7.5 sold for $999 on August 3rd, but still something that's much more affordable than what you're going to be paying for that first appearance in issue number 14. All right, number 6. This is a high sale. This is Fantastic Four #3 with a CGC 5.0 selling for $3,840. Now, I was excited to see this sale because I recently picked up a 6.0 of this book, if you watched one of my unboxings, and this is the first time the Fantastic Four appear in their costumes. So, and I just think it's a great cover, a great action cover, and I had estimated the price at just $2,500, and this was 54% above my estimate. Now, this wasn't a record for this book. The record for this book was $4,800, and that was set back on May 31st. However, that was for an old label CGC book. If you're not familiar with those, I'll see if I can find a picture and I'll pop it up over there. And it's possible that somebody thought that they could crack that book out and get a grade bump, and so that's why they were willing to pay a little bit more for that book than maybe it was worth in that grade at that time. Now, the reason I did have the estimate at $2,500 is because there had been more recent sales. A 5.5 had sold for $2,760 on August 2nd, and a 4.0 sold for $1,895 on June 30th. So that's where my $2,500 estimate came from. Now, I think this is a great book if you can get it. I think this is an incredible Fantastic Four key, especially if you can get it in a decent grade. It is tough because there are not a lot of them out there. There's less than 1,000 universal graded copies, actually 986, and you get into the top 50% of this book at just a 4.5. So that tells you how scarce it is and how scarce it is in higher grades. Now, it's not really a book with alternatives because of what it's a key for. It's a key for being very early Fantastic Four and just the first time they're in their costumes. But I do think this book is still undervalued at this time, and which is why I ended up picking one up. And so I think it's a great book to get if you can, especially with what we know is coming with Fantastic Four in the MCU. All right, number 5, and this is a low sale. This is X-Men number 49 with a CGC 9.2 that sold for $960. And when compared to issue 50, this book is often overlooked. Everybody loves issue 50 of the X-Men run. This is the first appearance of Polaris. Issue 50 is the second appearance of Polaris. They're both Steranko covers. And the other big thing about this is the last time that it has the original X-Men title, the format of the title. It changes in issue 50. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,400, and this was 31% below my estimate. And I really seriously considered going after this one. I think I might have thrown a bid in there too. Now, the prior high sale was $1,825 on May 10th. However, this was such a big jump from where it had been a year ago at $500, and a 9.4 had sold recently on August 2nd for $1,800. I didn't think that that was a true price for this book. I thought it was something more like the $1,400 that I estimated it as. But regardless, I think this was a great price for that book. I think it was a little bit of an overcorrection on the downside. Now, for alternatives, I wouldn't really go for any other book. I would just go for a lower grade of this book. Now, there aren't as many low-grade copies of this book actually graded. The value, I guess, probably isn't there, and so people don't tend to grade them. So if you really want a lower-grade copy of this book, you might have a better shot if you just try to buy the copy raw. Now, another option is X-Men 50, but that book has gone up a ton in the last year. It's actually gotten as expensive or even sometimes a little more expensive than this book. This is the second appearance of Polaris, like I mentioned, and just an extremely popular Steranko cover. And the high grades really do get pretty pricey. A 9.2 sold for $1,200 on July 26th, and that was about $375 a year ago. A 3.5 sold for $255 on July 26th, and that was just $44 a year ago. So that book is up 400% from a year ago. So it might be one that it's worthwhile to wait and see if it's going to pull back a little. Because if you watched any of my other market videos, you know I've said that X-Men books really do seem to be pulling back. So it's possible that you could get a better price if you watch these books for a little while. All right, number 4. And this is a high sale. This is Flash number 139. So Flash appeared a couple times on my list this week. This is a CGC 7.5 that sold for $1,800. This is a record in this grade. Not just any record, this is a big record for this book. Now, this is the first appearance of Professor Zoom, or the Reverse Flash. And I've showed this book recently in an unboxing. Mine was not nearly as nice as this copy. Mine's probably more like a 3 or a 3.5, I think. Now, this is probably my favorite Flash cover outside of the showcase covers. I really like this cover. I think it's just a cool cover with both him and Reverse Flash on that cover. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,100. This was 64% above that estimate. The prior record was just $1,219, but that was all the way back in 2015. It had a $1,140 sale on February 28th, but prior to that, it had just been hovering in the $700 to $800 range for the last couple of years. So this is a big, big jump for this book. Now, for alternatives, I do think this is the book to get for the Reverse Flash. It's a little pricey in the lower grades, but it's not too bad. A 1.8 sold for $225 on July 15th, so you can get into the book for $200 to $300. But if you want a more affordable option, another good choice is Reverse Flash's second appearance, which is in issue 147, and it has a very similar looking cover, so I think that is a good option. Much more affordable, a 6.5 sold for $156 on June 28th, and a 5.0 sold for $126 on April 26th. So quite a bit more affordable than what you're going to pay for his first appearance. Number 3, and this is a low sale. This is Conan the Barbarian, number 1, in a CBCS 9.4 that sold for $1,500. Now, this book has gone up quite a bit, like a lot of other keys over the last 6 months. And this is the first appearance of Conan the Barbarian. It is also considered one of the books that kicked off the Bronze Age, along with Green Lantern 76, kind of like the book for Marvel that kicked off that Bronze Age. Now, I had estimated the price at $2,350. This was 36% below that estimate. Now, it's possible that the fact that this was a CBCS book instead of a CGC book, that it contributed to that lower sale, but this was still significantly lower. Now, the high had been $3,050 on June 20th, but it also had a $2,645 sale on June 5th and a $2,350 sale on May 26th. So I had even kind of accounted for the fact that I thought because it was a CBCS book, it might sell for less, and still went well below that. Now, a year ago, this book was selling for $1,000. So selling for $1,500, still up 50%. It's still very respectable. I think this is a good one to watch just to see if this was maybe a fluke sale because of CBCS versus CGC, or if this is going to be a continued trend of lower prices for this book. Now, for alternatives, again, I wouldn't really go for another book. I would just go for a lower grade of this book. A 6.0 sold for $450 on July 23rd. And low grades often aren't graded just because there isn't quite the value there, and so you can generally get them raw for maybe $100 to $200. So number 2, now this is the most surprising high sale that I saw this week. This was a Golden Age book, Punch Comics number 11, and a CGC 5.5 that sold for $2,640. If you're not familiar with Punch Comics, it's a pretty rare run of books. This is early. This book is from 1944. And they have some pretty cool pre-code horror covers in them. Actually, one of the most famous pre-code horror covers is Punch Comics number 12. I've talked about it in some other videos. It's just an incredible skull cover. And this auction actually had quite a few issues from Punch Comics, but one that was missing was Punch Comics number 12. And I'm guessing that this collection of books came from the same person, because there is a copy of Punch Comics number 12 coming up in the next Heritage Signature auction, and that book is going to go for tens of thousands of dollars. And so I bet they just pulled that one aside, sold all of these ones in the regular auction, and they saved that book for the Signature auction. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,100. This was 140% above that estimate. Now, this book doesn't sell all that often, but a 6.0 did sell in November of last year for just $1,320, and a 4.5 sold in 2019 for $685. So I felt like $1,100 seemed pretty reasonable, but definitely that continued trend of demand for these rare pre-code horror books just drove this price up. Now, not all of the Punch comics sold for that much more. It just happened to be this one really went well above what my estimate was, and it just takes a couple bidders, just a couple people that really want that book, and you can have that back and forth where the price just keeps going and going until somebody finally caves, and that's probably what happened with this one. Now, alternatives, like I mentioned earlier, this is a pretty rare run of books, so coming across copies of Punch Comics at all is going to be tough. So I would generally recommend just finding other pre-code horror books that are just interesting to you, the ones that you'd like to collect. There are tons of different publishers out there that put out great pre-code horror books. We've got Avon, Harvey, EC, Continental, and so just go out there, take a look at those books, see which ones interest you, and then start looking around on either auctions or eBay. And I've mentioned these before. This is a great way to find books that are interesting to you. These are these Gerber photo journals, and so you can actually even see on the cover some of the pre-code horror books, like this Horrific right here. And I haven't gone through these in a little bit on the channel, but you can see it's just page after page after page of just covers. And so it's just tons and tons. It's not every cover. There are some that they don't have pictures of, and some that they skipped over when they're not as important or less rare, something like that. But it's just hundreds of pages of covers. And so I really do recommend, if you're interested at all in Golden Age comics or thinking of getting into Golden Age comics, going and picking those up. There's 2 volumes. Just buy them used. That's what I did. And you'll save yourself some money. Go look on eBay or Amazon for used copies and pick them up. They're a just great thing to pick up, fun to flip through. All right, so number 1. This is the most surprising low sale that I saw. This was Ghost Comics number 1 and a CGC 5.5 that sold for $1,020. And this one actually kills me that I did not bid on this book. Someone texted me about 2 minutes before this book was coming up. I was watching it, and I got involved in responding to someone, and before I knew it, the book had passed, and I didn't get to bid on it. Now, there's no guarantee I would have won it. It's possible that somebody else would have kept bidding against me and I would have sent it up, but still, it kills me that it sold for this little and I didn't get a chance to bid on that book. But Ghost Comics are just an incredible run of books. I've talked about them before, especially if you're interested in pre-code horror or good girl art. It really combines both of them in the covers for these books. And they don't come up for sale all that often, but they do have a pretty big price range depending on the issue, so there's lots of options out there for you if you're looking to get into these books. Now, I honestly think this is the best deal of the entire auction, at least of the books that I was watching. I had estimated the price at $2,100. This was 51% below my estimate. A 5.0 had sold for $2,280 on June 28th, and a 4.0 sold for $960 on July 26th. So I think this is just a steal for that book. Now, this is also a pretty nice grade for this one too. It's in the top 50% of the copies, so just a great deal for whoever got that book. Now for alternatives, like I mentioned earlier, this is a great run of books. There's a pretty big price range depending on the issue. Most expensive issues are 1, 2, and 6. And so you could go onto a site like Go Collector Cover Price and look at the issues, or I've got this book here. You can see on the bottom row there, that's issues 1 through 5. And then you've got the remaining issues on the top row there. And so you can see there are just some really cool pre-code horror, good girl type covers in the run of Ghost Comics. And so I just recommend looking through those, picking out 1 or 2 that you think are cool, and then just start watching either auctions or eBay, set up eBay alerts, that kind of thing. And eventually one will pop up for sale and you'll be able to pick up that book. Now, I actually did pick up 2 copies of issue number 6, which I was very excited about in a recent claim sale. Actually, one during the claim sale, one on their website, and I was shocked to see those books there because they're so uncommon. And so that's why I said during my top 10 buying tips, that the video I just put out, to keep your options open. Just always watch different places, Instagram, YouTube, eBay, wherever else, because I got those books on an Instagram claim sale. I mean, you never know where certain books are going to pop up, and so if you keep your options open and are always kind of on the lookout, you will find those books eventually, and you can usually find them for a pretty good price. So just my other little piece of advice there from my top 10 buying tips video that I had just put out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought there were some pretty cool books this week. I really enjoy making this. I think it's fun to talk about these and given the alternatives, all that kind of stuff. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to check out some of my videos, and the subscription button right here if you'd like to subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.